It's the mighty Dr. Wily, the hero of Hyrule, the Goomba smasher of the Mushroom Kingdom, and our only hope against the forces of evil. Using his powers of science and research, he can defeat any foe from Ganondorf to Bowser. Look at him go! Hiya! And now you can finally buy your own little Wily who will fight off evil, bake an egg, and more. But you only have around 21 days to get your very own tiny Wily, so you gotta be fast. So go to makeship.com today by clicking the link in the upper right corner, the description, or the pinned comment to get your Wily today. Because this is a limited time offer. Now, we all know that The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is one of the most depressing games out there. It deals with some heavy subject matter like death, loss, and even depression, which made it unique and famous among the other Zelda games that were a lot more lighthearted. Personally, I love it for what it is. The whole experience of playing this game is intense and emotionally heavy. And so when I played it as a kid, I tried to save everyone before finally beating Majora's Mask and finishing the game. However, there was always one that I couldn't save. The Butler's son. However, according to some, you can actually save him. So, is this really possible? What happens if you do save him? And how can you actually save him from his horrible fate? Well, today, we will look into all of this. Now, as we all know, Majora's Mask starts off in the world of Hyrule, where Link gets harassed by the Skull Kid and eventually chases him as he steals his horse. And so in the end, after a lot of hopping, jumping, skipping and whatnot, you fall down a hole and end up confronting the Skull Kid, who then turns you into a Deku Scrub. And so you are forced to chase him in order to finally return to your normal form and stop him from destroying Termina. However, along the way, we see something quite interesting. A Deku tree. And Tattle says the following about it. Come over to this tree and check it out. It's strange, but the way you look right now sort of looks like this tree. It looks all dark and gloomy, almost like it could start crying any second now. How sad. And after this, most players just continued on their journey to the strange land of Termina, turning their back on both this old dead tree and Hyrule as they go through the twisted portal below the clock tower. And for a very long time, you are busy with other stuff in the game until you finally beat the first dungeon and try to obtain the Mask of Sense. In order to get this one, you need to follow the Deku Butler through a maze-like area. But then he says something very interesting to Link while he is in his Deku form. He says he reminds him of his son, whom he used to race with through the Deku Shrine. And so a lot of fans realized at this point that the Deku mask they own is actually his son. And this is confirmed at the end of the game during the new day, because while the credits roll, you can see the Deku Butler mourning at his son's remains. And this was the one person I could never, ever save. But is there actually a way you can save him from this horrible fate? You can save almost everyone else in the game, right? So what about the Deku Butler's son? Well, according to rumors online, the Deku Butler's son could be returned to his true form by using some special methods, which usually involve the Song of Healing. And that's quite a good idea, because a lot of other people could be saved using the Song of Healing, for example, if they were cursed. However, there's a problem with all of this. After entering the Termina Clock Tower, the path back to the deformed tree is blocked off. This is due to the closing of the interdimensional seal between Hyrule and Termina after you go through the twisting tunnel. But as you could have predicted, there are, fortunately, ways to circumvent this. Namely by cheating or by exploiting a glitch called bomb hovering. In order to pull this off, you first have to do a trick called the infinite sword glitch, which makes Link's sword constantly active without needing to swing it. In this mode, he loses the ability to automatically jump off objects and will not be able to fall off ledges. And this is important for the second part of the trick, because when you have this active and backflip into shieldable damage, Link can actually hover in the air, and then you can reach distances or places that were impossible before. This is easily one of the most useful techniques in the game, if not the entire Zelda series. And it's used in both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask speedrunning. Now, to hover, you need damage to hit your shield, and bombs and bomb chews are the most common way of doing this. hence the name bomb hovering. Now, in order to start the hover, there's a minimum height that must be reached or else you will fall back to the ground, and so starting a hover from one bomb on flat ground is not high enough. Now, using this trick, you can make Link rise into the air, and eventually this allows him to clear the collision detection on the door and return to the tree. Unfortunately, however, when you do finally reach the Deku Butler's son, no amount of playing the Song of Healing, whether in Link's regular form or in Deku Scrub form, will heal him. And so people thought of one other way to bring him back. What would happen if you had the ocarina before you went to Termina? Would this change everything? Well, sadly enough, while this is an interesting idea, you can't really pull it off. There is actually a way you can spawn almost any item into the game, but this is only possible later in the game using glitches that alter the coding of the game, also known as arbitrary code execution. I'm not really gonna explain this because it's quite complex. But to put it simply, players can put code into the game themselves by performing specific actions in the game, and it allows you to do almost anything. One thing you can do with this is access the inventory editor using a series of glitches. This one is actually not too hard to explain, so let me tell you what you must do in order to access it. Heck, you could even do it at home yourself, after some practice. As far as I could find, it used to take forever to pull this off, but in time they figured out a new way of doing it. Also, I will try to explain this the best I can, but it is quite, weird. First, you need a Japanese debug ROM of Majora's Mask. These are normally used for development, but they should be available on virtual consoles from Nintendo. Then you must have a specific file name and go to Ikana Graveyard, where you need to do a few glitches and actions. All of this writes code into the game and alters things. At that point, you go to the mask screen and put the cursor over the All Night mask slot, and then go to the quest status screen and put the cursor over the song associated with the Zoras. And if you now unpause and pull out your ocarina, you get access to the debug menu, which allows you to get any item in the game. But again, this can only be done later on. To be honest, the Majora's Mask speedrunning community can do all kinds of crazy things. They can even transport themselves to the final cutscene of the game. And so if you want to know more about this stuff, you should really look it up. It is fascinating, but also very complicated. But still, all of this wasn't enough to save the Deku Butler's son. So while this stuff was promising, it once again led nowhere, and the Majora's Mask community was once again very, very disappointed. And if you look into the files of the game, you find nothing related to the Deku Butler's son coming back to life or his original form. Sure, there's a lot of stuff in there that's interesting, because originally the game was going to be bigger with the cycle lasting 7 days instead of 3, but there's nothing when it comes to bringing back the Deku Butler's son. So it seems like the plan all along was to keep him in this form forever and function as a dark introduction to the game. And it does make sense story-wise that you can't save him from this dark fate. His soul resides within the Deku Mask, and you can actually see his original body whenever you play the Elegy of Emptiness while wearing the mask. In a lot of ways, it's similar to what happened to Darmani and Mikau. They were dead or dying, and while you saved their soul, you couldn't save their body. No matter what you did in the game, they were gonna die, and you can't do anything about it. Which is also the case when it comes to the Butler's son. Although I bet his transition from living being to soul trapped in a mask wasn't as peaceful, as the Skull Kid was the one who did it using Majora's Mask. So while all of this was certainly sad to say the least, it is something we have to accept. Although it would have been cool if we could actually save him afterwards using the Song of Healing. But sadly enough, this dark and depressing game won't allow that. And that's also kind of the point, to be honest. However, there are rumors in the Zelda community that might actually be real, like beating the Running Man from Ocarina of Time, which I also covered in a video. So go check out that video by clicking in the upper right corner or on the screen right now. Thank you all so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any contents or video ideas, leave them below. Click the bell button, subscribe, leave a like, do all the good stuff, it really helps out, and I love you.